You don't need another certificate. You need embodiment. Welcome back to another episode of the Crown Yourself podcast. I am your host, Kimberly Spencer. And oh my gosh, I'm giddy with excitement first and foremost because the Crown Yourself podcast is now officially on the YouTube. And what I mean by that is we had our Queen TV for years while we lived in Australia. And through the transition of coming back to California and then picking up everything and then moving again to our home in outside of Austin, Texas, like we just didn't do YouTube. And I set the intention this year, which sounds crazy because I also had a baby and I was like, I want to bring back YouTube. I want to do it. So if you're listening to this podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, be sure to go over to YouTube and subscribe and watch it on YouTube because it'll just be a little different. It may be a little shorter, it may be a little longer on YouTube. So there will be other pieces and things that we'll get and give you by being a subscriber on YouTube. So be sure to head on over to YouTube and subscribe on YouTube if you have not. I don't know how many times I could say YouTube in one sentence. But for today, we are going to be talking about this moment of stepping up into being the coach, the mentor, the leader you know you're meant to be. And this has come cyclically, like in a way, just coming onto YouTube is a part of that stepping up. Like this is actual, like right here, embodiment happening right now, because I could give all the excuses in the world. Like I just had a baby. She's 11 weeks old. Actually, no, she's 12 weeks old today. Pregnancy hormones hit me right now. She's 3 months old today. And one of the beautiful things about having my daughter, like I have two beautiful boys, 7 and 3, almost 8 and 4. But having my daughter, I am seeing so much of how I want her to see women and what I want her to see as a coach, as a mentor, as a leader, and what feminine leadership principles actually look like. And that takes courage, and it takes courage to do things before you're ready. Like I literally, like my setup, it's so cute because I was like, oh, I have my mic stand. It's going to look all like podcasty on YouTube. Yeah, something's up with the stand and how it's positioned, and it just doesn't catch the sound very well. So I literally had to stack the mic onto books to get that podcast look. Is that professional? No. Who cares? Like who decides what is professional? And I think a lot of us can come from this desire for professionalism and perfectionism, especially in high recovering perfectionists right here. But real leaders actually come from wholeness. Real leaders actually come from a place of embodiment. And it comes from a place of acknowledging, okay, I am not where I want to be yet, but that doesn't disqualify the heaps of experience, the heaps of trainings and certifications and life that I have lived that actually puts me in the best position to coach, to serve, to guide, to lead in this capacity. And so often we let our stories and our certifications or lack thereof discredit us. And we let these things, the stories, especially around perfectionism, we let those discredit our actual qualifications, which are our lived experiences. Real leaders come from wholeness, not perfection. And when we can look at those degrees of perfecting, and this is what is different. You don't have to have everything figured out for you to be able to serve and charge for your services. You don't have to have every step of every inch of your life figured out because life is going to life. We are going to face struggles and challenges and hardships. And here's the thing, you're going to notice in a magical way and I see this constantly with my clients who are in some form of leadership, whether they are CEOs, founders, coaches, healers, they constantly see that the struggles that they're going through in their business mirror the belief systems that they've had in other areas that they actually are now serving to help people with. Because and in this way that you get to learn alongside your clients. You get to learn alongside those who you lead. Leadership is not this top-down preaching style of leadership anymore. It is collaborative. Leadership is a relationship and guiding someone to an outcome. And sometimes in that teaching, I mean, I'm sure you've heard it said, you teach what you most need to know. And so often you'll see and hear, and I catch myself all the time saying, oh my gosh, that's a principle I need to more deeply embody. I don't need to go run off and get another certification. I don't need to run off and, go on a 6-month hiatus away from life and a spiritual retreat in order to find myself and that one missing piece. It's not missing. It's just an unlocking. It's an awakening and it's an unfolding. It's like the image of the lotus. So the embodied leader, and what an embodied leader truly leads through, is first and foremost your story. Your story is the curriculum. It is the guide. Because even though you may be still having struggles in some area of your life, in those areas where you can authentically show up as a leader, that is where you get to share your story as a metaphor, is what they call it in NLP, a metaphor for the potential results that your clients and customers can receive. The other piece is that leaders speak from scars, not wounds. So I am not one to tell you when something is a scar and when it is an open gangrenous wound, but you will know. So for example, just today, I literally just got off of a podcast called Building Healthy Relationships, The 4 Habits. And on that podcast, I shared the cash flow transition and the complete pivot that we had in our guest podcasting agency, Communication Queens, where we went from a full done for you agency into now a consultative model. And so we just changed the model in Q4. And that required me to decrease our team size by 85%. And that also had me take a very harsh look right after the gigantic successful launch of my book to say, oh, okay, we actually have a model problem. We have a broken model in the business. And it was also breaking me as a leader because I was struggling with my pregnancy and borderline anemia at that time. And I realized that my body was trying to communicate, this model does not work for you at this season of your life. And that's okay. And yet now, 6 months later, I'm sharing on a podcast about the cash flow crisis that we experienced in Communication Queens very openly, because I honestly think more business owners, especially female business owners, need to recognize that that's just a part of business. Like, it happens, it's okay. And once you start hitting certain revenue markers, the next thing that you actually need to focus on is profit and cash flow. And I have coached and worked with multi-million-dollar business owners who I had one business owner who said, I am working harder at the $1 million level and taking home less than I did when I was pulling in 5 figures as a solopreneur. And I was like, damn, like that's a restructuring that needs to happen. So just so you know, like, this is a conversation that most people don't like to have, because everybody shares their revenue numbers, but they don't actually share those cash flow numbers. And I've shared about this on several podcasts recently that I've been going on, because I think it's a topic, especially, like I said, for female leaders and female business owners, that we need to discuss, because there's almost an aversion to a feeling of inadequacy because women have not been taught this. However, guys, and I shared about this when I was speaking on the NABO panel, the National Association of Women Business Owners panel in Austin. I said, men go through this round of business called funding. And most female business owners never go through that. Not only is it because we only receive about 2% of venture capital, but most female business owners don't go through that cycle because it's not in our awareness that that's physically available to us. We literally, as women, have only been able to make money in the past 200 years. So ladies, give yourself a little bit of grace and recognize that these pieces of business that come with cash flow and profit and accounting and all those things, they're not taught. Like, unless you went to business school. And I know I didn't. I went to the school of hard knocks. So I had to learn these lessons the hard way. But fortunately, I don't have a student loan. So in that way, I'm actually quite grateful. But you want to speak from your scars. So once I processed the shame, the guilt, the embarrassment that came from, oh my gosh, here I am, business coach, and I ignored my numbers because I was on this big speaking tour of my books, and I was pregnant, and I got a little overwhelmed with all the things I was managing. And I didn't catch that there were certain innovations that needed to be made in my business that I didn't do. And that was embarrassing for me. And once I healed the shame and healed the guilt, I now can speak about that from a place of authenticity because I saw the need for that. I can't tell you how many conversations I get into to with leaders who literally silently share their cash flow and profit revenue, their profit margins. They're blasting out the profit, but they silently share because they are struggling, because they don't know if they can pay their team on Friday and it's Tuesday. And that is a real fear that happens to a lot of business owners. And so not that I want to normalize that, because I actually think we can transcend that, but I don't think we can transcend that without being aware that that is a common problem that happens to a lot of business owners, and especially as women. And so now I can teach from that place that was a wound, and it hurt. It hurt having to let go of 85% of my team. 85% of my team who, like, literally, we had cried together over one of our team members losing her spouse. Like, we had cried together, we had bonded together, and we, like, the culture that we had was amazing. And at the same time, it was just not sustainable. And that was so hard as a leader to make that decision. And I think the more we can speak to the tough decisions, not the highlight reel, but the tough decisions that we have to make that form our scars, that allow us to say we went into the arena and we got bloodied and we got battered and we got knocked down. And you know what? We got back up and we figured out something and we healed that part. And now we're not normalizing, but we are raising awareness to the fact that this is common, so that you no longer are shrouded in shame of this piece. And I've seen this in every area, whether, like, not only just cash flow and profit, but I've seen this with revenue. I've seen this in people's bodies of, I don't want to share about this procedure I had, or that I did this diet, or I feel like I'm the only one who's struggling with this thing in my marriage or with my kids. When we lock ourselves into that mindset of being the only one, that's where people really deeply struggle. And that's where you, as a coach, as a mentor, as a leader, that's where you show up in your genius zone. That's where you get to shine and pull people out of that darkness and share, hey, you're not alone in this. And that's a powerful, badass move to make. I mean, that's why I created the collective membership with Crown Yourself, so that we can have a community where we normalize the conversations about the hard things that go on in business and life and with growth. Because let's face it, we're facing a lot of hard things, and that is okay, because we are presented with the opportunity to face it, which means our unconscious minds believe that we are ready. And it means that we're ready to grow, which means it gets uncomfortable. And when we can be in a community that says, hey, I see you. I may not have been there personally in that aspect of that specific situation, but I feel you. Like, I was on a conversation the other day with a woman who was the kindest human. And she was sharing some things about her body. And while I don't have the same challenges with my body, because she was dealing with an actual genetic diagnosis, I can identify with what it feels like to not feel right in your body, because I did struggle with 10 years of bulimia. I know what that feels like. I can have empathy in that situation. And I can at least say, I see you, I hear you, I accept where you're at. And I can't tell you the relief I had when I walked into a room of a female-owned business. I walked into a room of female-owned businesses, and it was a very small room because it was at the Dames Fun Friends back in 2024. And I had just had the debrief with my board on our numbers, and I was like, oh crap, that's not good. And there were 2 sessions that were happening for businesses that were doing 250 multiple millions. One was on sales, marketing, and PR. So sexy, so fun. And that one was packed, gigantic room, small room, bookkeeping and HR and cash flow management. Not so many people wanted to go into that one, but I did. And I walked in, and so many business owners from 250K to 500K to $1 million to beyond were sharing about the same struggles that I was going through. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not alone. Oh my God, thank you. I'm so grateful to be in this room. I now get to face my problem. It's now an opportunity that I get to grow through, and I don't have to do it by myself. And that in and of itself was life-changing for healing the shame, the embarrassment, the guilt, and all those feelings that come when you think you're the only person who's ever gone through the thing that you're going through. And that's why I created the collective, because we're going to speak, allow the wounds to speak, not from a place of victimization, but saying, can you help me heal this? Can you help me heal this cash flow crunch? Can you help me heal this system problem? Can you help me heal this team problem? whether it's in your personal support team at home with your partner and your grandma and your in-laws and all those people, or whether it's in your professional team and the people who work for you or your colleagues or your business partners. That is why I created the collective, which, by the way, if you want to jump in, it is just down below. We are launching officially on June 9th. So make sure you just click below if that's something you're like, yes, I want to feel like I have a community where I can be seen going through holistic success and getting like big ass wins and going through the struggles that come with growth. Number 3, you want to practice the message. And this comes with coaching, with mentorship, with leadership. You need to get in the reps of your messages. And those reps come from communicating it, whether it's sharing it in a post, whether it's asking ChatGPT and being like, hey, I'd like to share this in a post, and not completely abdicating your voice to ChatGPT, but asking it back and forth with AI of saying, okay, I'd like to share this message. Is there a way that I can share this that can be really empowering for others? How can I share this without sharing too much personal information or specifics around my business so that I keep certain business matters private? Some industries have more regulations than others. And then play with that. The other place to play with sharing your message is on smaller podcasts, because a smaller podcast will get heard by a nice niche, small amount of people. More often than not, with podcasts and podcast interviews, your existing audience, unless you share something that's like super profound and different on a podcast, more often than not, your existing audience, they may come over and listen. They may pop in, but it's more a collaborative experience to share audiences and say, oh, I really like this person, and let's listen to another episode, not just me speaking, because my audience knows much of my story. And it allows my audience, when I go on a guest interview, to explore other resources from another podcast perspective. So that can be a great place to dabble and play with how is your message being received? Because here's the benefit of doing it on a podcast interview and getting in the reps. When you do it on a podcast interview, you have somebody who you are looking at directly to see their body language as to how they receive the message. And that is a bonus, because when you record it on YouTube and you put it out there for your people, you don't see their reactions in real time. You don't see how they're engaging and building a relationship with your content. When you do a podcast interview, you have real time, face to face. Oh, I see that this caused them to take a breath. This caused them to like have a real emotional moment. Those are moments to just build into your communication repertoire. And then those are things that you can then leverage to have an even more powerful, impactful, memorable message later on. When I did my TED Talk, I had 3 weeks to prepare, and I've done a few videos from back in 2021 on that. And if you want, I'll leave a link down below if you want to go listen to how I did my TED Talk with only 3 weeks of preparation. But I was talking to a client of mine, and this client had gone into a very advanced speaker training with another coach. And she called me up and she was like, Kim, why do I need this? I said, well, you're the one who signed up for it. And she said, well, I don't like the coach. It feels like he's pushing me. I signed up for this, but I know you did your TED Talk in only 3 weeks. Like, what if I just like winged it? And I was like, TED Talk, not really something you want to wing. And I knew I could handle the pressure. I said, I also had done up to that point 150 podcast interviews to get in my reps to communicate that specific message. So there is power in the reps. So that by the time I had the opportunity to do the TED Talk, I knew I could put it together within 3 weeks because I knew what would land. I knew those moments that would be powerful and that could be impactful because I'd seen it in real time when sharing certain stories. And on top of that, I have done 20 years of well, not recently, between the age of 10 and the age of 24, I did performance training, improv, musical theater, singing, dance, all types. Dance I started when I was like 5. So, I have had a lot of time on stages performing and practicing and getting in the reps so that when I had the opportunity to do my TED Talk and had a shortened time frame to be able to prepare, literally write, prepare, deliver within 3 weeks, I knew I could do it. No brainer. I knew I could do it easy peasy. My client had not had that much time in preparation. And so by the end of our conversation, she was like, I might want to stick with this training. I said, yeah, could be that sounds like a great decision. Does that feel good in your body? And she's like, actually, it does. Once she looked at it through the lens of a few reframes. But I say this so that you know it's the practice of getting in your reps, whether that's starting your own podcast and having 3 listeners listen to it so you can just prepare and get the message out, or whether that's going on other people's podcasts. It's one of the easiest ways to practice your message because you do get feedback in real time, or going on stages and contacting your local chamber of commerce or local lunch and learn to see if you can get in front of people, or going to a Toastmasters to just get in those reps. You have to practice your message. And that is why. So you have to practice your message so that when you deliver it, it resonates from your soul. And here's the caveat on the other side for those established speakers and leaders: you have to not just be good. And what I mean by that is your message to be the mentor, the leader that you know that you can be. When you're good in delivering what you do, a lot of times you may not show up with the same amount of enthusiasm. You may not show up with the same amount of energy because you could wing it. You could just, I could share this message and say, okay, here we go. I'm doing this. Here's my content, doing the YouTube, doing the podcast, because I know it's that good and I can do it. And we had that with one of our clients who wasn't seeing business coming in from his podcast interviews. And I talked to a few of the podcasters and I was like, what gives? I thought this could be really aligned. And 1, he wasn't following the follow-up processes. And 2, one of the podcasters gave the feedback of it just seemed like he just was saying the same thing that he'd said on 50 other podcast interviews. And there was no energy. There was a lack of presence. And it was good. It was good content. It was solid. It was solid content. And the energy wasn't there. The presence wasn't there. The recognition that the audience that he was speaking to had never heard his message before. And that's a powerful concept to grasp, especially when you have practiced and done the work for years of speaking, leading, coaching, training, mentoring. If you stop showing presence and full energy into what you do, they're going to say something changed. And they may not know it consciously. They may not know what it is, but they'll probably not re-enroll. They'll probably go find another mentor, because that's the problem with just being good. So you can't put yourself up on a pedestal just because you've done the reps. So there, on the one hand, there's you got to do the reps. On the other side, you have to not just rely on the reps that you've done. It's like when you go to the gym and you see those people who go to the gym and they go every day and they're doing the same thing and they're not making any progress. They're just doing the same routine. And you may be making progress because every time you go there, you bring your full presence and you're just hitting it. But you see that woman on the elliptical, and I speak from the experience at my gym from being back from when I was back in LA, and she saw me in my post-pregnancy transformation. She's like, oh my gosh, you've transformed. But that's because when I get on the elliptical, I'm a freaking beast. I'm it's scary. Don't capture my face because I am looking at it like I am climbing Everest. I am seeing goals. I am seeing visions. That's where I dream. That's where I get into it. I listen to music and I get activated. But you see the people who just go in and they go through the motions. And that's the problem with being good, which also isn't leaning into your full potential of being the coach, the mentor, the leader that you're meant to be. So just to recap, claim your story as your curriculum. Speak from your scars, not from your wounds. If you have an open wound, not the time to be sharing it on a podcast or to the people that you mentor. You can share it from the space of I have healed this. And only you know how long it takes to heal. I just shared on the 4 Habits podcast, I shared an experience that I went through yesterday. There was a very emotional postpartum, crying, all the things experience. But by today, that's healed. And it can happen that fast, but you know how fast it is and you know whether it's a scar, not a wound. And then lastly, practice the message, get in your reps, and don't just rely on your reps and the fact that you've been doing them for years to just show up without presence. Reps, practice, and full presence, full engagement, full energy. And with that, if you want to claim your voice and your leadership and your next level, and with that, if you want to take this conversation to the next level and you're like, yes, I want to be surrounded by a collective of amazing leaders, then jump into our membership, The Collective, that opens on June 9th. And I'm so excited to welcome you with open arms to a space where we are going to activate you into action, not just send you journal prompts. Not that there's anything wrong with journal prompts, but the whole goal is that this collective inspires you to actively face the things that you are avoiding, actively go for those goals in a whole new way, leveling through month to month our Queen Bee curriculum. Every month, you get coaching from me on your mindset, your skill set, your branding, your marketing. And that's just not your marketing in how you do business. That's your marketing is how are you marketing your own message to your family, to your legacy. Yeah, we're talking holistic success. We're not just talking business success. So if you want to jump in, click down below and jump in on the collective, and I will see you in there. As always, my fellow sovereigns, own your throne, mind your business, because your reign is now. Tune in next week.